Gothic horror is a subgenre of horror, which has a focus on atmosphere and setting. The antagonist is often supernatural, or in some cases presumed supernatural in the start of the book, but is revealed to be realistic. A good example is from Romance of the Forest, where a woman tries to sleep in a bed next to her father's corpse. She hears unnatural noises when she attempts to sleep and believes a ghost is after her. However, she eventually falls asleep. When she awakes, it is revealed it was the servant who was making the noises. Gothic horror involves protagonists who wants to achieve a goal at the start of the story, but towards the end of the story notices the consequences and doesn't achieve it. For its debut in the 18th century, the violence was rather intense. The genre also has large amounts of sexism, which is probably offensive to women. A large majority of Gothic horror stories have female protagonists who easily faint or run away from threats, or similar stalking background characters. Men, however, are portrayed more honorable. Semi-related to sexism, there is also a large amount of melodrama in this genre, which has essentially to make fun out of itself. Women are typically melodramatic, for example in a scene in The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where a woman runs around screaming upon a cabinet being opened. Some usual settings of Gothic horror would be like a foggy place, or a place, really of course it's always dark, and the mood that's set is always creepy. Conflicts in this genre have a distinct evil and good side, who can often be the same person. For example in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where Dr. Jekyll battles his secret identity throughout the book. The same book has also had a very profound impact on superheroes in general, which I will discuss later.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is one of the most recognizable books in the genre, being a great example of a man versus science conflict and the idea of a split personality identity, in addition to probably inventing the latter in literature. The setting is also very grim throughout the book, mostly ranging from dark streets at night to dank cellars used as laboratories. This book distinguishes itself from the genre by how the book is structured. One half is a crime novel, while the other half is Gothic horror. This was initially done to increase sales, as detective stories were very popular at the time. The Hulk is a decent example of Gothic horror, as it displays many staples of the genre, while being a more modern example than Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. A common conflict in Gothic horror, man versus science, is also very clearly used in this film, as Bruce and everyone around him struggles against the modifications his father made. This film has clear influence from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which is another example of Gothic horror. However, it also has some influence which it has made itself. This clip is from a TV series based on the Hulk and shows the end credits, which seem to be very memorable for some reason.
I'm the monster.
Bob Kane's Batman is also a notable example of having the villain Two-Face, a duality-obsessed man who has a remarkable representation about the portrayal of good versus evil. Two-Face gradually becomes more evil over the course of the comics, similarly to Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde in his respective story. In the series in general, the evil side is easily distinguishable from the good one, similarly to most Gothic horror novels. Now on to examples for Gothic horror.
Who did done do it? Well, having read many mystery novels, I know that the only way to discover the culprit is to investigate. Exactly! And as chief detective, that's exactly what I'm gonna do.
You're investigating?
Yeah! And Twilight shall be my lowly assistant who asks silly questions with obvious answers. Fine, Pinky. Should we start looking for clues? Perfect question, my dear Twilight, because the obvious answer is... Yes? No, because I know who did it! Pinky, how could you possibly know? How could I possibly not know? Clearly this dastardly deed was done by the baker, who knew their dessert could not measure up to the mastery of the marzipan mascarpone meringue madness. I guess you feared your eclairs lacked flair! Gustav!
Starts out with somewhat of a detective story, but then develops into a Gothic horror. The antagonist also seems to be supernatural, but due to this being a children's show, it is sadly lacking in on-screen Gothic violence. Another modern example could be the science fiction trilogy Mass Effect, which has several elements remarkably similar to Gothic horror. Despite being a video game, the influence from Gothic horror is surprisingly prevalent. During dialogue choices, there's moral choices, choosing whether to be good or bad, similar to Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde's division of morals. There's also a quite big man versus science or machines conflict among intelligent robots and their creators. But as expected, there's obligatory romance sections to further add to this being a Gothic horror novel, sort of.
Some of the largest influences Robert Louis Stevenson had is most probably reflected well in the superhero genre. Many of the cliches in this genre originated in the strange case of Mr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The most obvious influence is displayed in how the conflicts in typical superhero stories are, involving the good side preventing the bad side from doing bad things. On the contrary, in most well-written fiction, the bad side can be easily mistaken to be a good one. However, in most superhero stories, the villains are evil just to be malicious, similar to Mr. Hyde in Stevenson's book, Disease. Characters have split identities both using conventional and supernatural methods. For example, when Bruce Campbell turns into Hulk, he is quite obviously not using conventional methods, but most superheroes wear a mask, suit, etc. The influence of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde can even be traced to the science fiction trilogy Mass the fuck?